Her and my brother didn't want to move in together, since they only had dated for a few months. She opted instead to search for a new roommate online. Browsing Craigslist, she found an ad titled something like "Roommate Wanted, Females Only." This sort of thing was common since the area she was looking in was mostly young professionals. The listing was for a room in a house for about $225 a month, which was quite cheap compared to the most places listed. The occupant listed herself as a 23-year-old college student that wasn't comfortable with living with any males. The other roommate would have their own room and attached bathroom. So far, Amanda was into this place. However, the listing only had a single photo from outside the property. Amanda sent an email wanting to meet the occupant and tour of the house. Within 30 minutes, she received an email back with all the details and time to stop by. The girl worked late hours and wanted Amanda to stop by at 8 p.m. When Amanda arrives, there is a handwritten note on the front door saying, "Door broken, use back door." Walking around the house, it looks nice but slightly unkempt. Tall grass, weeds, dusty windows, etc. Still, no alarms for Amanda though. When she knocks on the back door, an older man opens it. At first, Amanda thinks she had the wrong house, but the man reassures her and says that the occupant, I forgot the name, was out and he was the landlord. The occupant asked him to meet Amanda since she was working late. He seemed pleasant and offered to show her around. Alarms start going off, but aren't at red alert yet. First, the guy was clearly in his 40s, unshaven and looked like he lived in his car. Also, only the kitchen light was on. As they walked around the house, Amanda noticed one huge red flag. No furniture, nothing. The landlord was polite about answering questions, but seemed irritable to keep lighting on for too long. As they walked around the house, Amanda noticed one huge red flag. No furniture, nothing. The landlord was polite about answering questions, but seemed irritable to keep lights on for too long, rushing her around and only letting her look at rooms for a few moments. There was a single room that the landlord would not open, telling her that it was the occupant's room and he didn't want to invade her privacy. As they walk down the hallway into the living room, she notices the front door has a plank nailed across it. Broken, for sure. Amanda's creepometer is starting to ding, so she decides to wrap up the walkthrough and leave, but trying to be polite. As she's giving the guy her "thanks for showing me around" bit, he perks up and states that he forgot to show her the basement. It's recently furnished and would be great for a rec room, and she could take a look down there. At the time, Amanda and the landlord are standing in the small hallway between the front living room and the back kitchen. In this little hallway was the basement door. When he opens the door, it opens outward to create something of a barrier between Amanda and the back door. The basement is pitch black. He smiles, motions down the stairs and says,
"Ladies first."
What happens next is nothing more than a stroke of good luck. Amanda get a text just of a random person that's parked in front of the house. Thinking on her feet, she pretends it's a phone call and answers her phone. "Hey, yeah, are you there? I'll come out around from the back and let you in. It's great, you'll have to see it." With a motion of confidence, she excuses herself around the landlord and walks out the back door. She says the guy just looked at her and he was very confused. Once outside, she sprinted to her car and sped like hell out of there. When Amanda got home, she told her mother and my brother everything. Cops were called, they took her statement and went to investigate. The Craigslist post had been removed. The house had been foreclosed over 6 months. and the property had been abandoned. When the police investigated, they found that the closed room the landlord didn't want me to go in, where the man had been staying, there was a pile of old dirty blankets, rotten food, and empty gallon jugs everywhere. More creepy was he had plastered ripped up pages from porno mags on all the walls in the room. Where do they even find porno mags? The really scary part of this whole basement thing, the man had tied a thin piece of fishing twine at about shin level across the stairs about halfway down. The basement was empty, except another pile of old blankets, a broom handle wrapped in leather belts, and a small box with a few rolls of assorted tape, duct tape, electrical tape, etc. Amanda ended up not moving in. I am 22 and this incident happened about a year and a half ago. I had just moved into my first apartment and was in the process of moving in. The door that led into my apartment locks itself automatically when closed. So, I was going to the entrance of the apartment complex to get my mail while talking on the phone with my boyfriend. I returned to my apartment and sat on the bed while opening the mail while using the phone. I dropped the phone on the floor and it landed under the bed, so I had to lie on the floor and stretch for it. I saw something that caught my eye. There was someone under my bed. My eyes widened and I choked the urge to scream. And he didn't see me. Trying to be rational while so many thoughts rushed through my head, I picked up the phone and said, "Sorry, I dropped my phone. I'm just gonna take a quick shower and call you back." The bathroom is right by my bed, so I hastily walked in, quietly locked the door, turned the shower on, jumped out my window. My apartment is on the first floor, and I called the police. They told me to wait nearby, but to go across the street and see if anyone comes out the door to the apartment complex. This was during summer, and it was still light out. I placed myself across the street, hiding behind a car while watching my open bathroom window and the entry door. I called my boyfriend and he came to me just before the police. I gave them my keys and they went inside. Only moments later, 2 cops came out holding a thin and tired-looking man. His eyes looked crazy. But he didn't try to get away. The policeman that stood beside me the whole time and comforted me while the police were searching through my house. I was a mess, shivering and crying. They told me that the man stood outside my bathroom door with one of my kitchen knives waiting for me to come out. This man had somehow crept in my entry door while I was getting my mail and hid under my bed. The man that was trying to hurt me turned out to be a homeless person and was placed in a mental hospital. My boyfriend moved in with me that very next day.
I have to start off by pointing out that I don't spend much time in my own neighborhood. However, who comes in and out of it on a daily basis is usually pretty obvious. If a vehicle seems unfamiliar, you kind of ask yourself, who's that? And then you move along. This isn't about the cars that visit my cul-de-sac, though. It's more mysterious than that. I get the feeling it's more sinister than that. I usually take a cab to work. I was broke on that Tuesday morning, however, so I ended up deciding on a walk to work. It's a 45-minute walk on a good day, but it was breezy and sunny, so I didn't mind the scenic stroll. I stepped off my lawn at about 9 a.m. and made my way down the first stretch toward the main road. I looked down at my phone and placed my earbuds into my ears, deciding on some heavier music to pump me up for the walk. After selecting a playlist, I went through it on shuffle and looked back up from my phone. My heart immediately skipped a beat. Just ahead of me, in the foliage-laden side years of the first house on my street, stood a woman. She seemed odd and out of place with her bright scarlet evening dress and long, greasy black hair. Her pale skin glimmered dully in the morning sun, sticking out amongst the brush and array of rainbow flowers. What's she doing? I wondered to myself. She was just standing there, looking at the ground. I continued walking closer, which at some point left a gray pickup truck between the unusual lady and myself. I walked a little faster so as to get eyes on her again. Unfortunately, as I got close enough to be looking directly where she had been standing, she was no longer there. I blinked a few times and stopped walking for a moment. I was confused about what I'd witnessed, or if I'd even witnessed it at all. Was it a mirage? I mean, even with the breeze, it was still hot as hell out, and I hadn't even eaten breakfast. Also, the town I live in is full of weirdos and druggies. She could have just been an addict. I wasn't too sure, but I had to continue walking so I wouldn't be late for work. I didn't get home that night until just about sundown. I've been thinking about the event of the morning all damn day. Laying in bed proved useless in helping the creepy image of the lady in the scarlet dress leave my mind, so I opted for some whiskey and a cigarette on my porch. She was just standing there, I kept saying to myself, staring at the ground. But who was she? Did she live there? That's when it hit me. That house. Years ago, I had gone to a yard sale there. I had to have been 11 or 12. The previous owners were selling a bunch of their belongings, and I had noticed something about what they had on display. Almost all of it had something to do with witchcraft. Pendants, strange dishes and clothes, jewelry with symbols on them, and even a stuffed black bird. My mother made me walk home while she scolded the lady for showing me the eerie items. And the house has been empty since they moved out. Could that woman have something to do with the previous owners of the house? If so, why was she there? I had to find out. I threw my cigarette and went back inside to grab a flashlight. I didn't pack anything special. I was only planning on checking out the property and then leaving. This won't take long, I told myself. I probably won't find anything anyway. I arrived outside the house at about 10 o'clock. The street light across the road was broken, leaving the yard almost completely black. That made the flashlight nothing short of necessary. I clicked it on and stepped onto the grass. The air was cool and still, and the whole neighborhood was silent. It was that type of silence you get inside an empty building, in a way. No sound. Nobody. I usually describe it as an echoey silence. The chimes by the back porch reverberated in the wind. I shone my light on a rickety old garden shed in the backyard, which caught my eye immediately. Now, the smart thing to do would have been to just not go in the shed. It looked menacing against the otherwise inarguably beautiful landscaping. Upon entering the shed, I was greeted by nothing. It was cleared out, empty of everything except for a dismembered trowel and a cracked plastic watering can. I sighed in relief, not really sure what I expected in the first place. What did I think I'd find? A dead body? I laughed to myself, shaking my head as I turned to exit the shed. That's when my flashlight hit the floor. As I stumbled backwards, my head hit a higher-up shelf on the wall by the door frame. The loud clack of my light hitting the floor pierced through the night as it popped open, leaving the battery to roll across the wooden floor. There, looming just outside the shed entrance, was the woman from that morning. Her ghostly pale silhouette hovered over my body as I stared in horror from the floorboards. Who are you? I stammered, my head throbbing from the fall. I could barely see through the darkness of my now blurred vision. Her scarlet dress stood out, though, a bright oddity in the wooden structure around me. She didn't reply. I crawled backward a bit, attempting to find my flashlight and batteries in the shadows, never taking my eyes off the woman. Her stringy, greasy dark hair covered most of her face, but I could almost make out her nose and lips as my eyes adjusted vaguely through the dark night between us. She had gangly white arms, which hung lamely at her side, and the long dress swayed in the breeze around her legs, which I imagine were probably just as thin and long as her arms. My heart was racing out of my ribcage. Incredibly, I was able to assemble my flashlight in the dark, finding my batteries just below the workbench behind me. I clicked it on and shined it right at the ghostly woman's face. That's when it happened. Her hair, it parted away from her face. Instantly, she opened her mouth, revealing scarlet teeth, just the same color as her clothing. Her nose, it was partially torn in the left nostril, and it hung part way from her face. Her eyes, though, they were missing. Then, there was the scream. She let out a scream I could describe in no other way but blood-curdling. I must have gone just as she did, as my blood cells scrambled away from my head and down through my neck. Her vocal cords must have been shattering from this type of trauma and abuse. My eardrums popped and rang as I joined her with a scream of a different kind. Fear. I turned to my left and noticed a window slightly ajar, perfect for a quick escape. I darted toward it and slid it open all the way, before hurling myself out of it. I didn't stop running until I got to my bedroom. I couldn't risk stopping, and my heart wouldn't let me. It was beating out of my chest, and the blood was pulsing through my body. I don't know what I'd just seen. I don't want to believe it, but I know what I saw. She's probably still out there somewhere. And I dread my next encounter with the Scarlet Woman.
In South Korea, parents put a lot of pressure on their children to study hard and do well at school. There was one Korean girl whose parents were especially tough on her. They forced her to study 7 days a week, and she was seldom allowed to go out and have fun with her friends. They even bought her an old school desk so she could study better at home. After a few days, the girl started to have problems. It was not that the subjects she was studying were difficult. Instead, it was the fact that her back would start to hurt whenever she was sitting in her desk for more than a few minutes. The pain became worse and worse, and she couldn't study properly. Her grades began to slip, and her parents began to worry. Her mother took her to numerous doctors, but none of them could find anything wrong with her back. They said that it must be due to stress. The strange thing was that the girl could study without any problems when she was in school, but as soon as she came home and sat down at her desk, she began feeling intense pain in her back. As the girl's grades slipped lower and lower, her mother became desperate to solve the problem. She even started to consult psychics and fortune tellers in the hopes that they could find the cure for what's ailing her daughter. Unfortunately, none of them could help. However, one day, the mother was talking to one of her friends. The woman suggested that it could be something to do with the girl's posture. She told the mother to take a photograph of her daughter sitting at the desk. The mother went home that night and took her camera out of the cupboard. The girl sat down at the school desk and the mother snapped a picture. When she looked at the photograph, she was horrified. Her daughter was sitting at the school desk, but above her was a girl hanging by the neck from a noose. The ghostly girl was desperately trying to put her feet on the daughter's shoulders. The next morning, the mother went to the school where she had bought the desk and interrogated the school principal. It turned out that the mysterious girl in the picture was an ex-pupil of the school. She was the girl who had previously sat at that desk. She hadn't been able to handle the pressure of school, and she had hung herself in the classroom a few years before.
This is the Grimtail Brothers. Make sure you like and subscribe for more.